So whenever you're talking about starting a business, I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there in terms of if I start a business, can I just start writing my lifestyle off? That's not what this webinar is speaking to. The answer to that is no, by the way. This is speaking to people who are either considering starting their own business with the intention of making a profit, maybe sustaining their lives with it, or potentially switching from being an independent contractor or being an employee to an independent contractor. So the different kind of questions you need to ask yourself are, do you plan to make money with this business? If the answer is no, it is not necessarily, it's not a business. Make money doesn't necessarily mean cash in hand. It could be I'm going to spend money in order to invest in something and build it up, sell it at a profit later. But if your intention is simply I'm going to spend money and not ever produce income, not really a business, not something I necessarily recommend setting up. Next question would be kind of geared towards, let's say, Catherine here, working at Hawk Kruse and Associates, talking about opening a GM business. If Catherine says, I currently have an idea to sell GMs. I'm going to sell 2,000 jars of GMs a year at $1 a piece. Can Catherine live off of $2,000 a year? It seems unlikely to an outsider and to me, knowing her. So maybe I wouldn't necessarily recommend stopping, quitting the day job in order to do this, but you could still open up a side business. So that's more in the terms of, should we make a dramatic life change or maybe start dipping our toes into something to see how we can make it grow?
How would you say, Jordan, so like if I came to you and was like, I'd like to start this business, and your first question to me is, are you going to make money, and are you going to make money that'll support your extravagant lifestyle? I am probably going to say, I have no idea. How would I know that?
Sure.
What would your advice be?
So I'd say it depends on your industry, but try to get some sort of gauge in terms of the revenue that you could bring in. So in your situation, I would ask you, how many berries do you think you can produce? How many quarts of berries produce a jar of jam? How much do you think you can sell a jar of jam for? That'll give you an idea of their revenue numbers. If you're leaving a current place of employment and you know that you're going to bring contacts with you, some potential contracts, evaluating whether or not you'll be interfered with a non-compete, evaluating the value that you have in those contracts and whether or not that revenue could support your business, evaluate whether or not you are going to have to immediately bring in employees based on the time required. So just thinking about what's currently in place at this time. It's very easy for me to say those things. I know that it is an estimation and it's not necessarily straightforward, but putting some time and thought into, do you think that you can make money is really the question at the end of the day.
Definitely.
The last option is for someone considering being switched over to an independent contractor. Sometimes that's an option where you have the ability to go from being an employee to an independent contractor. An independent contractor, it's similar to where you're normally contracting with a singular company in this instance, but you are essentially running your own business where you're invoicing for your time, where you are able to write off expenses. So there's positives and negatives to doing it. I would recommend, if you have that option, that you contact us so that we can help you evaluate what the most beneficial options are. Because yes, you can write off more expenses and reduce your tax burden as an independent contractor, but there are downsides in terms of you are subject to additional styles of tax. You may no longer have the benefits that you would have as an employee. So there's multiple things to consider. And I would say in those instances, it's best to just go to a professional to help you make that decision. So in this scenario, we're going to be asking Catherine here what she plans to do with her business in order to select these different styles of businesses. Before I kind of get into those questions, I'll just give you a brief overview on all of these different styles.
And before you get into the styles, could you explain why entity selection, like why is this the very first slide that we cover after we decided that we should in fact start a GM business?
Entity selection oftentimes dictates how your business will operate. You're always able to make changes, but sometimes those changes have consequences. So making a decision of what you plan for your business to become or who you plan to go into business with is important in the very beginning. So picking the type of entity, selecting an entity, becoming an entity is the first step. So evaluating what type is best for you is an important step in what I think you should do first. after you've decided whether or not you should start a business. So sole proprietorship can be seen as an individual simply doing business for themselves under their own social security number, under their own tax reporting system. LLC is similar to a sole proprietorship if it's a single member LLC, but you have an additional layer of legal protection, which I won't get into because I'm not a lawyer, but there is something there in terms of creating a corporate veil for yourself. LLCs are flexible in terms of they can eventually become taxed as partnerships, be taxed as S corporations. I've never heard of an LLC becoming a C corporation. I don't know that that one's possible. Partnership, you can think of as an LLC, just that additional layer of protection, but you're going into business with another individual. So you can't be a sole proprietorship with two partners. You can be an LLC taxed as a partnership. There are some upsides and downsides in terms of having multiple partners and whether or not you should select partnership involving self-employment taxes. I won't get into that whole description at this time, but it is something to consider. S corporations have the benefit of avoiding a certain type of tax called self-employment tax. The downside is there's additional administrative costs. There's additional restrictions in terms of how you can take money out and treat other partners. There's additional restrictions in terms of how debt can be treated as equity or how debt can be traded as basis. So S corporation is one of those entities that anytime someone comes and talks to me, they say, I've heard about this company, this type of corporation. It seems to be the best. It can work for a lot of people. I'm not going to say it's the best all the time. I'm not going to say it's the best most of the time, but it can be beneficial to certain types of companies. And the last one is a C corporation. C corporation is administratively burdensome. It does have the ability to bring in different styles of investors, different levels of stock ownership. It's the entity of choice whenever you're thinking about going public with an entity, taking on lots of investors, building a company for sale. So what I would ask Catherine is, Catherine, number one, do you plan for this business to make money? What are you planning on doing with it?
I do plan for the business to make money. And I would say, though, I'd like to start by myself trying to figure out what the business is and how successfully to run it. I do see the business growing as well and hopefully being able to bring on other employees, hopefully be able to start working with other vendors, maybe even shipping my jam one day.
Okay. Do you plan on starting this business with anyone else? Or are you doing it by yourself?
For now, or I'm definitely starting the business by myself. I have a specific vision that I want to be sure that I see to fruition. It's a fruit pun.
Oh, I got it.
Fruition.
Do you plan on growing this business for sale, going public with it, competing against Smuckers, anything like that?
Currently, I don't think that my business will go public. I don't see it going that way, but you never know.
Sure. And as we know, Catherine, the first strawberry harvest is kind of happening right now. So it seems unlikely maybe you'll be able to produce all those jars of jam in the first year. Maybe that'll be more likely next year, which means you're not necessarily going to run a profit in the first year, which is pretty common for your business. So the kind of the key factors in determining what entity selection I would pick for Catherine, I would not choose. I don't often recommend sole proprietorship. I think it really is more of a viable options in, states like California, where there's large LLC filing administrative fees every year, something like $800. LLC is very cheap. I think it's $50 to register it with the state of Missouri. And then beyond that, it gives you that extra layer of protection that you're probably looking for. So LLC is an option for you. A partnership, since you're not going into business with anyone, you can't be a partnership. A C corporation, would not recommend due to the double level of taxation, the fact that you're not planning on growing this business to the point where you're trying to go public or grow it for sale, take on venture capitalists, anything like that in the meantime.
What about, I have a lot of friends with small businesses who are very successful, and I hear them talking about S corporations a lot. Is there a reason why you wouldn't consider my business for an S corporation? Well,
I don't think that you're going to make a profit in the first year, which is normal for a starting business. I like businesses to start off as single member LLCs and make a transition to an S corporation whenever it makes sense. It allows us to take advantage of, if your future structure changes, if you take on a new partner that maybe you want some different ownerships with. I think it's your current income levels, the income levels we expect for the first couple of years. It's not necessarily that beneficial, if at all beneficial, for you to become an S corporation. Normally, it takes a pretty well-established business, in my opinion, to become an S corporation.
Great. Can I change? Like, let's say all of a sudden, my success is overwhelming. The business is growing. I can take on employees. Like, am I like kind of stuck here with this specific entity? Can I ever change entities? How does that work?
You can change entities. You can become a partnership. You can become an S corporation. So yes, absolutely. It is flexible in the future.
Okay.
So after Catherine has decided to go into business, has decided she's going to become a single member LLC, we kind of get started on the next more tangible steps in terms of actually creating this business. So the first step is always to register with the Secretary of State. That's an online application. Once again, it's around $50. It's not overly complex. If you're not comfortable filling in forms, if you're not comfortable working with the government, you may want to hire someone out. You can do that with Hawk Cruising Associates. You can work with a lawyer. You can have a spouse do it. Anyone can really do it for you. The next step after that is you're going to obtain your EIN. An EIN is like a social security number for a business. You need that for your LLC in order to open up basically to open a bank account is the main reason behind it. It also creates a link between you and the IRS and that business. So we highly recommend that's your next step. That is free. It's very easy to go to the incorrect website to register an EIN. I do it often. I go to register EINs often, and even 9 years in of doing that, it was about a year ago, I saw a website, clicked on it. It looked like all the correct information, but at the end it asked me for payment information, which is not correct. And so I stopped. So make sure that it ends in a .gov whenever you register your EIN. And once again, same group of people can help you register for an EIN.
One thing that I noticed yesterday when I was signing up for an account with the IRS is that you can actually go to the IRS's main page now, has the link to go ahead and obtain an EIN. So just kind of like a fun fact there. It's very easy to find.
Yep. After you have your EIN, you're able to open that bank account, which is a vitally important step. It's time to start separating your business activity versus your personal activity, which will then later allow you to evaluate the profitability of your business rather than having it mixed in with any other sorts of transactions you would have.
Let's say I really hate going to the bank, Jordan. I find it to be difficult to work with people. It usually seems harder than it should be, and I just don't want to start a business bank account. What would your suggestion be or your rebuttal?
I would ask that you reevaluate that position for 20 minutes to go open your business bank account because it is important.
What are some of the issues we see when clients decide not to do that?
You see a mixture of personal and business expenses, which then leads to inadequate records, which can then lead to difficulty with your CPA firm, who you want to have a great relationship with, difficulty in having your return filed. It can then lead into you overstating your business expenses because you're not exactly sure what should be separated out anymore, which I have seen then lead to an IRS audit.
Right. Really seems like a good idea to get a bank account.
Get the bank account. After you started your bank account, one thing you want to think about doing is setting up an operating agreement. I will say if you're going into business with any sort of partner, it's vitally important. I don't care if it's your brother, your mom, your spouse. Relationships change over time. Agreements that are unsaid are often forgotten in times of turmoil. So whenever it comes to times of conflict, this operating agreement lays out the rules of your business. So if, for example, you want there to be something in place in case capital contributions are required so that you can start a new venture, whatever it is. Does your other partner need to contribute capital with you? If they don't, does that dilute their ownership? So things that are uncomfortable to talk about, it lays the rules out beforehand. Normally, you're going to have that done by a lawyer, is my recommendation. You have other options in terms of going online to something like LegalZoom. That is a cheap option, potentially okay if you're a single member LLC. I can't speak to the quality of their stuff, but there are options out there for you that I recommend you at least explore. And then the last one is create an email for your business. Start that layer of professionalism immediately. If Catherine had me emailing her about jam orders for my store, and it was just Catherine Jam at yahoo.com, I might find it odd rather than being associated with a business.
Definitely. And I think another part of that is kind of goes back to why you have a business bank account as well, is because like you just don't want your personal life and your business life interacting with each other. There's that professionalism of having a professional email address, but also like your personal email address probably gets a lot of extra mail that you just don't need as part of your business. You want to keep those things separate as a general rule.
Also, I would think that, you can do most of these things pretty quickly. So you should be relatively excited about starting a business and should want a nice email, maybe email header later. I don't know. But getting excited about starting your business off on the right foot, which includes a professional look. Speaking of professional, one thing I do recommend you do as well is develop a team of professionals to work with you in the beginning. So find a financial advisor, find a banker, find a lawyer, find an insurance broker, did I say a CPA? I hope so. Find a CPA. That team around you is going to help keep you on the right track. The first person you find may not be a perfect fit, but it's important to keep looking, because having good advisors around you is an investment in the company and yourself. It is not, I wouldn't consider it an expense. It will save you money in the long term. It'll give you good ideas in the long term. Just because we are CPAs doesn't mean that we only understand accounting. We work with businesses every day. Just because a financial advisor specifically invests in Apple doesn't mean that's all they understand. They also understand life planning. They understand starting a new business as well, because they've worked with other professionals that are doing the same. They'll have ideas that might help you, such as retirement accounts. So set your team in place so that you have a good group of advisors. And Kevin, you want to talk a little bit about setting your business processes before the business starts?
Definitely. This goes back to kind of all the things that we have recommended in terms of like just get it set up correctly. Make sure that your business and your personal life are separated, bank account, email address. The other thing that you want to do, whether or not you fully started your business, is being sure that you have a process written out for every single part of the business. Like, so you want to start with, how does your business work? In this case, like, how do I make my product? How does it go from start to finish? But then you also want to think about the things like, how do you work with your vendors? What's your bill pay process? How do you want to invoice people? Having those processes written down and making sure that you're following them uniformly across the board is going to save you a lot of time when your business gets more and more successful. Again, it's like very easy to say, my business just isn't that big. I don't really need all these things. But when you start to grow, and hopefully it'll happen really quickly, you want to have those processes in place now, especially if you are to bring on more people. If you start to interact with more vendors, it's just going to be a lot easier in the long run. And something else like that also applies to the slide before that you want to be paying attention to is, what are the standards in your industry that you should be paying attention to as well? So who are the professionals that Catherine in my jam industry should be interfacing with? Are there farmers that I should be getting to know that might have ingredients that I don't personally grow on my jam compound? Are there manufacturers who make the special glasses that I'm going to be working with that I want to establish a good relationship with? Same thing with processes, like understanding the processes in your industry, not reinventing the wheel and deciding that you need to do it all over from scratch, like, is a really important part of getting the business off on the right track. And kind of the same thing just in terms of registrations. If you have a specific industry that you're going to be working in, do a little bit of extra research and make sure that you have registered for the different types of industry or the different requirements. It might even not be the industry. It might be that you live in the city of St. Louis and they have different requirements across
Right.
the board. Pay attention, like, do you need to file a sales and use tax? Do you need to set up your payroll? All of those things are important to do and are definitely worth the research beforehand, because nobody likes to receive notices from the government saying that you set your business up incorrectly, when really it only took a couple of hours of research, or maybe just to call the hot cruisy in order to advise you as to what the right thing is for your business, your industry, or even like where you live.
Yeah.
Anything else here?
Yeah, I think on the processes piece, a lot of people may get nervous about the fact that they're setting these things out in the very beginning and maybe they're going to change. It's okay that they change.
Definitely.
You just need some sort of system in place so that you can document it, so that people can follow it if you bring in new people, and so that your business stays continuous as it changes at the same time.
Absolutely. So we're about halfway through the webinar right now. We'll be going until probably about 12:45 or so. Just a reminder that if you have a question for Jordan and I, if you have a question about JAM, if you have any comments, please feel free to send us a chat or a question. We want to be sure that we're answering kind of like what's in your head, and that we're being as comprehensive as possible.
So the next part that we're going to be talking about is helping you select a software package, right? So some of the questions that you'll need to be asking yourself, which I'll ask Catherine now, is, Catherine, do you want to work on a desktop because you're worried about security, even though that may not necessarily be reasonable? Are you wanting to access the programs on your phone? What are you wanting out of your accounting software?
I think what's important to me is to be able to access it from anywhere. I don't particularly enjoy using my phone for business purposes or things that I would typically use a computer for. So I think that basically like ease of access is important, but it doesn't have to be on every device that I use all the time. And I think the other part of that is the more efficient I can get the different programs that I'm using, like the more that I can get them all to interface in one place, frankly, so I don't have to remember 45 username and passwords and how each software interacts with the other one, I would say the better for me.
Okay. And then what kind of clients are you going to be selling to? Are you going to be sending out invoices to grocery stores? Are you going to a farmer's market? Where are you going to sell retail style? What do you need your system to be able to produce?
I think right now, as I start the business, I'm going to be selling to individual buyers. So more like a farmer's market setting, or
Mhm.
even it's really easy to set up a storefront online. So I might do it that way as well. But definitely like one-on-one interactions where I'll want people to be able to pay easily without a lot of hassle.
So what I'm hearing then is maybe you don't necessarily need the ability to send bulk invoices out, but rather you need some sort of point of sale system in place.
Yes, I would say like right now, I definitely don't need the bulk invoicing capability, but I would want to be sure that whatever accounting system I use has that ability for the future, since my business is going to grow and I'm going to need a more robust system.
Okay. And then if you're having a point of sale system, I assume you want it to be able to take credit cards. It's not going to be a cash only business.
That is correct.
Excellent. Are you going to be keeping inventory of your GMs? Are you going to be keeping large amounts of inventory, or as soon as it's jarred, it's sold?
That's a great question. I think right now, because I won't have that much inventory aside, I don't know that it's an important part of the business. But again, as I'm selling larger and larger orders and possibly shipping it, I think inventory will become extremely important to be sure that I'm not selling jam I don't actually have.
Sure. So all these different questions, including what reports you want to see. The reports are not necessarily standard all across the board. A lot of them have similar reports, but others have more detailed reports in terms of what you're able to see. I would recommend people look up accounting softwares, look to see if they have these abilities that they need, look to see if they plug into certain systems that they want to use whenever making a selection. Once again, it's not set in concrete, but what I can tell you is that switching accounting softwares is not the easiest thing. And if you're not a professional accountant, I don't see a lot of success rate in switching yourself. So it's something that you'll probably have to pay for later. So take some extra time to figure out what works for you.
What would you say? So like the question, what are the reports, or like, what are the numbers that matter to me? Like, what are some variations there from new business owners? Like, what are some different items that like might matter to me? Like, are there differences there? Is that a question that every business owner is going to know the answer to?
I think that some accounting systems have more detailed reports in terms of what you're able to see with maybe inventory or fixed assets, whatever is important to your business. So evaluating what you think is a key performance indicator of your business maybe can help you decide in terms of what reports you'd like to see. So if you'd like to see inventory aging, for example, to know that, hey, my strawberry jams are going to expire after 2 years on the rack, maybe you need something in place that allows you to see that.
Excellent. That sounds great. We did just get a question in. I'm spending a lot of time getting the business up and running. Can you do the accounting system vetting for us and train and install? What a great question. We're going to be talking about some things for you to consider. And at the end, we do have a slide of all of the options you would have if you choose to work with Hot Kruse to set up your business. But the fast answer to that is yes, absolutely. Anything we talked to you about today on the PowerPoint, we are happy to get priced out for you and to assist you with throughout your journey.
Yeah. Just to give you kind of maybe a little bit of a head start, there are a couple different options in terms of what are very popular ones. Those are QuickBooks Online and Xero. Our office works with them personally. So if you're growing your business and you want us to take over for it once you've earned enough revenue, that's certainly an option. And those are two that we work very commonly with. I know that I personally prefer QuickBooks Online just because that's more in line with what I used historically back whenever I worked in that part of the business. I know that our current team all likes Xero better because that is what they have used predominantly in their career here. So on those two, they're both higher quality systems. It's really a matter of preference. You can normally do some sort of free trial where you can kind of click around, experiment, see which one works best for you. They're both good options in my opinion.
I think too, the question that was most recently asked too, the question of, can you do the vetting for the accounting system for us? Definitely, we can talk you through both QuickBooks Online and Xero, but sometimes your specific industry might have an accounting system that's worth looking into, and that's something that we have done for clients as well. So definitely something to think about. My question is, Jordan, like both QuickBooks Online and Xero have like a fairly substantial monthly fee. I know Xero is like approximately $30 a month for someone who's going to use all of its capabilities, which could feel like a lot for someone who's not making any money on their new business. Like, what is your recommendation? Like, let's say I find an online accounting system that's $10 a month. Like, is it worth, would you say, going with like the more name brand accounting system? Like, would you recommend we just go ahead and find the cheapest one? Like, what do you tell clients?
I normally recommend one of these two. Using a cheaper system is always an option. Whenever you're talking about comparing the two, you're not comparing apples to apples. So Xero has, for example, a version that is cheap. I'll call it like $6-8 a month. If Nick's on this, I'm sorry if that's wrong, but I think that's about right. Where maybe the costs are more comparable to one of those outside third-party systems that are much cheaper. I think the difference is it doesn't provide you all the capabilities. I think the difference is that these other systems have more base level fees that allow you to grow into a larger system while still being on their system, so making the transition fairly easy. Whereas the other one, once again, in order to transition from whatever accounting system, Kuhlengel accounting system, over to Xero, normally you're going to have to get someone else involved to help you with the transition.
Definitely. And just to underscore one more time, Jordan already says this, it's just not fun to change accounting systems. Lots of things can go wrong, to be honest with you. Like, it's one of the projects that can be the most frustrating for clients. Whether they're bringing Hot Kruse in the beginning, it's going to take some time to be sure we get it right for you, or they've brought us in after they've already done the conversion themselves and we've had to start over. It's the one project that I think most people cringe a little bit over. Obviously, the end result's going to be good because you're going to get the system that you're looking for. But definitely, I can't underscore enough how important it is to take a little bit of extra time and research what you really think is going to be the right thing for you.
Yep.
So once we have our accounting system decided, what do we do next?
The next step is to create a chart of accounts. What that means is your business is going to have different items that you earn money on, bring money in with, and spend money on. So items of revenue. So if you have different types of sales in your jam business, so if you want to separate out your blackberry jam sales versus your strawberry jam sales, those would be two different line items. As you can imagine, based on those descriptions, charts of accounts can vary across different industries. If I run an auto shop business and because Catherine's my friend, I'm like, yeah, here, just copy my chart of accounts. It won't be helpful to her. Machine parts will not necessarily be applicable. So thinking about what you're going to be spending your money on, how you want to separate out the income versus expenses that you see is somewhat unique to you. But there are options of, you can, I believe Catherine, prior to this meeting and research for it, looked up a chart of accounts for a jam business that was actually produced by a state. So there is normally something out there that can help you in terms of taking those first steps. I would say it's best to start smaller with a chart of accounts and grow it as you go versus starting with a chart of accounts that's 5,000 lines long and kind of trimming it down. Small to me means your profit and loss should fit on a single page. Your balance sheet should fit it on a single page.
And we're going to go over this a little bit more extensively during next week's webinar, just to be sure that everyone has a pretty good grasp on what this is. And we'll have a couple of examples too, so that you can see the different categories and what's out there.
Yep. And then the next step after you've decided what your chart of accounts is this one is for convenience and for ease of use, connecting a bank feed. What that means is if I use Regions Bank and I'm using a debit card to buy all sorts of jars and jams and whatnot for Catherine as her personal assistant through the business, and then it's time to do the accounting, rather than manually typing in, this is what we spent money on for this dollar amount at this location. Instead, what will happen is your bank will connect and kind of export a transaction, which includes a description of the vendor, an amount, and from that, you can simply code it into your accounting software rather than having to manually record each transaction yourself.
This is a great option that I think can't be underscored enough, especially if you are unsure about your chart of accounts or unsure of how you're coding your transactions. When you create a rule for your bank feed, you are kind of automatically like ensuring that every time you take a client to Arby's for lunch, that Arby's is coded as the same transaction over and over again. I think sometimes like a bank feed will break, or people will get a little bit uncomfortable with the technology aspect of just like letting your bank do everything for you. And I can't underscore enough like how much time it's going to save you as a business owner, but also the importance of that accuracy, because when you create the role, you're really giving it the rule, you're really giving it over to the computer.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect every time. You still want to check if the computer's work, but it does save you a lot of time to concentrate on what you actually want to be doing, which is your business.
Yep, absolutely. After that, you want to think about connecting other add-ons of your business. So if you have an inventory tracking system, a lot of time that system will leak up, especially to one of these larger providers. Another benefit of choosing kind of a name brand provider, link up, and it can then keep your inventory tracking system will then match up with your books, which I will say if they're not connected, normally it's not going to at all.
You can do a lot of research on that in advance as well. Like I know offhand, actually, QuickBooks has a couple of different inventory apps that Xero doesn't actually interface with. So again, really thinking through before you choose the right system to you. There are so many different credit card processors out there. You want to be sure that you use the one that's right for you. And then after you've decided that, make sure it's going to connect to the right accounting system or vice versa. QuickBooks has a really, I know QuickBooks interfaces with payroll sometimes, like there's just a lot there. Like be sure that you're really paying attention to all of the different options that you would like and making sure that those options are definitely going to interface with either QuickBooks or Xero or whatever accounting software you choose.
And I would say my advice on this piece would be, if you're thinking about choosing an accounting system and you think to yourself, I love the color blue, so I love Zero, but it doesn't connect to your bank. It doesn't connect to any of your apps, but QuickBooks does. Go with the green one in this case, and go with the one that is more connective with all the other systems you're going to use, because it will create a more easy user experience for you versus, once again, having to do everything essentially manually.
We did just get another question in that we'll answer briefly now, but I think we'll definitely answer it at length in other sessions. But the question is, can't I just enter the credit card payment as an expense and not mess with all of this other stuff?
That's a great question.
Great question.
So there are different rules in terms of the classification of expenses. The answer is no. I'm sorry, stranger out there. But it could be a fixed asset purchase. It could be a charitable donation, which has different deduction rules compared to normal operating expenses. It could be meals and entertainment. It could be strictly entertainment, which is no longer deductible. So you cannot simply enter in a credit card transaction as your singular business expense. I'll also say that if you're taking all the time of putting these records together to accurately reflect your income and expenses, this kind of works against that in terms of taking a large block expense and calling it a credit card expense, for example.
This we'll definitely talk more about, I think, next time as well, and we'll give you some examples of how those different options can play out too.
Yep. The last thing that you can do, I'll let Catherine speak to customizing your system and adding invoices and logos, as she works with that at Kruse and is way more knowledgeable than I am on it.
I think this goes a lot to actually what our next slide is going to be, which is general best practices. I wrote as the subheader, not accounting, but still helpful and important to pay attention to. So as you are customizing your system and taking all of the different considerations into consideration, as you're considering all of your different options, be sure that you are taking advantage of all the different options to customize these different apps and softwares to your specific business. If there's an ability to put your logo, your business logo on your invoices, put the business logo on your invoices. Sometimes like you have the ability to put like a link on the bottom of your invoices so that clients can pay just by clicking on the link. Pay attention to options like that as you go that are really going to affect your customer experience. And I think, you know, another thing that we can get into, like when you start a business, it's easy to have tunnel vision and just say like, well, I'm only working with a couple of friends, or the people that I'm working with know me. I don't really need to put all of this extra effort into seeming like a real business. I have 3 transactions. The more time that you spend like projecting yourself as a real business, the more people are really likely to notice you and refer to you otherwise. The other part of that is the easier you make it to work with you, again, like the more people are going to pay attention to you. So put your invoice or put your logo on your invoices, give people a link to click on to pay, make it as user-friendly as possible. And a lot of different apps and softwares already really have that built in. All you need to do is pay attention and figure out how to get it to work.
Right. There's lots of competition with businesses no longer necessarily needing to be brick and mortar today. So if I run into Catherine at a farmer's market and I find out she's in need of an accountant, and I hand her a sticky note that I wrote on with crayon, it's unlikely that she'll call me to use my accounting services, even though I'm absolutely qualified to provide them. If I hand her a business card, it legitimizes me as a professional. So do the same across the board in terms of your invoicing, your emails, etc.
Absolutely a great example of that. These are some best practices we've kind of gathered, just again, like based on anecdotal experience of working with clients and things to pay attention to. So Google Business offers a free account. You don't have to pay to have a Google Business account. This allows you to establish your business as a location for people to drive to. You can set it up with all of the different options that you want. And all you have to do is literally go to Google, say you'd like to list a business. You do have to have a Gmail address. That's the one place that they'll get you. And you can set up all of that information for free. You want to set up your social media accounts. Whether or not you like social media, That is one of the ways that people judge your business as legitimate. If they are looking up very good jams online and they can't find that I have an Instagram where I'm posting cute pictures of strawberries with chickens running around, like they might say, is this a real business? Or even like, is this a business that is who it says it is? Like, it seems like there's someone like that grows their own berries, makes their own jam. Wouldn't you think that they would want to tell more about that to the clients on the internet? So setting up social media is a really important thing in today's age. It's how people figure out or like decide whether or not you're legitimate. Another part of that is making sure that your address and key contact information is correct on the internet. Sometimes people register their business under their home address when they don't have a PO box or they don't have a location of business. As you grow, like think about whether or not you really want your home address to be the place where your business is supposedly located. Consider getting a PO box if you don't have an office that you're going to. Again, thinking about professionalism. Someone looks you up online and they see that your like address is a residential neighborhood. Again, they're going to wonder, is this a real business or is it not? So yeah, so we have the more legit your business looks online, the easier it is for your potential clients to trust you. It just takes a little bit of extra thought and a little bit of making sure that you are putting your best foot forward from the very beginning. And then the last tip that we have is think about what you like about other businesses and make a list of goals there. So Jordan and my favorite bakery offers a point system for when you use the same credit card with them.
What?
Jordan didn't know that our favorite bakery has a point system where when you use the same credit card repeatedly, you get loyalty points, and one day you get a free scone or something. You want to be sure like to be taking those things into consideration. Maybe it's not why you go to the business, but it's something that enhances the experience. And again, there are a lot of apps out there that are specifically designed for you to enable a really positive customer experience. So be sure that you're looking into them, that you spend a little bit of extra time. It's going to get you a long way. And we do have a couple of questions actually.
Great.
First question, can I take a picture of my receipts for my record keeping?
I mean, you certainly can. You should have them stored somewhere safe. It shouldn't be your only form of record keeping, just having a phone full of pictures of receipts.
Don't do that.
If that is your methodology, I ask that you don't come work with me. Or if you do, you be open to changing that immediately.
I think the question also might be wondering if there's like an app for that.
There is an app for that for Receipt Bank where you can take a picture of a receipt and you can attach it to an expense.
And it does, that is an app specifically that works with Xero, probably works with QuickBooks as well. So another just kind of like a nice feature to pay attention to. If we don't have this written out in one of our webinars, we'll certainly work it in to talk a little bit more about like different types of expenses and what you can take and what you can't take.
Yep.
So we'll definitely be sure to cover that. Other question, if I register that information, does it make me more susceptible to hacking? The answer is no. I mean, I think that keeping your business separate from your personal information actually keeps you more secure from hacking because you're not co-mingling your social security number and all of the personal information that protects your identity.
Yep.
Last slide, how can HKA help?
Sure. So we perform the EIN registrations, registering with the Secretary of State. If you're thinking about paying yourself, employees, we do payroll. If you're going to be selling jam, I would recommend that you come contact us anyway for sales and use tax registration, maybe sales tax reporting with the state. We can help you with accounting system selection, bookkeeping services, blueprinting your business. So setting up those processes that we were talking about. And we can also be an outside resource for helping you start your business, helping you grow it as an outside coach. So we can do almost anything.
Anything that we've covered
Except
today.
make the jam.
I can help you with the jam. It will be an outside charge. We've even helped a couple clients honestly set up their Google business listing just because it's easy. I have some experience with it. Anything we've talked about today, we're more than happy to talk to you about. We do charge for most of these services, but if you just want to have a call to run through the different options, to answer questions, to talk about entities, please don't hesitate to give us a call. We always let you know if it's something that we need to charge for or not in advance. So next week,
we'll be showing you guys a sample chart of accounts, talking about how you can utilize and read your financial statements. So all this work that you performed in these stages, you can then take the next step and start using it.
excellent. If you have any questions about this webinar or you'd like to set a call, please don't hesitate to contact us. I've got Jordan's contact information, my contact information, the office's contact information here. And as we said before, we'll also be posting this to YouTube if you would like to watch it again for